Hey guys, Christina here, and today I want to talk a little bit about how to save money on post-secondary education. So I really wanted to spend some time kind of sharing some tips and some tricks, things that we've learned over the years on how to save money, kind of on a whole variety of topics. And it seems kind of weird maybe to start with university, but that's kind of where, at least for my husband and I, that's where we got married, that's where our financial journey started. And I had only kind of been on my own for about a year and a half before that. So it was kind of a financial beginning, where you're learning to pay bills, where you've got your first credit card, all of that stuff. So I kind of wanted to start there. I've got a set of notes here because I'm going to try and stay on track and not miss things that I want to share. So first I just wanted to mention, kind of full circle, the age that I'm at now. We are preparing to help our children with their post-secondary education. We don't plan to save and to pay for everything because we're just not in a position to do that. We do want to help them out some though, and then hopefully all these things I'm going to talk about, our children will utilize those. Maybe they'll even watch this video one day and hopefully be able to come out without a lot of debt or with no debt from post-secondary. But I do like RESPs. I like the family contribution plan. I like that the government gives grants proportionate and based on income to what you're putting in, and that if one child doesn't use it, it can just move over to another child. So I just wanted to mention that because, of course, getting into university, if you have the financial means to help your children, that's wonderful. If you don't, maybe that's something to look at, something to consider. So kind of along with that, before going to university, the other thing I wanted to mention is working. So if you are planning to attend university, post-secondary education, and you are planning to get a job, one thing you want to look for or consider is there's some employers who actually will give you either tuition or partial tuition or scholarships. So if you're just looking kind of for your first job, you want to keep that in mind and maybe look up some employers that are going to be able to help you as you get into post-secondary education and help you to attain your goals in that way. Also, I wanted to mention choosing the post-secondary education, where you want to go. Of course, you have to do your research, right? Is it worth paying a much higher fee for the exact same degree you could get somewhere else for less? There's a lot of things. What's the ratio of graduates who are working? What's the overall cost? What's the time investment? So many things you need to consider, but I just wanted to put that out there too. Sometimes the same degree is the same degree, and you have to decide if it's worth paying more for it or not. So then, probably the biggest thing people talk about when they talk about saving money for post-secondary is scholarships and bursaries, which I'm not going to talk a lot about that. It's pretty basic, but I wanted to mention a few things. So first of all, look for scholarships wherever you can. I actually went to a scholarship class in high school. It was like a accredited class, that's what we did, where we looked for scholarships. And because I'm Canadian and I went to university in the US, I didn't end up finding any scholarships during that time. But I learned how to research for them and I learned how to apply for them, and that was really valuable. There are so many scholarships and bursaries out there, like it's ridiculous. You can look where you live, you can look where you're going to, like whatever town or city, province, state that you're in, that the university or whatever's in, any organizations that you, your parents, even your grandparents have been involved in over the years. Sometimes there's bursaries or scholarships that you can get from that, like very random and bizarre kind of things. So look everywhere that you possibly can. You also want to apply for all the scholarships. This was really interesting. I learned at my university, some of the smaller scholarships never got awarded. There would be like maybe a semester or two where no one even applied for them. And that's just free money sitting right there. Everyone tends to go for the really big scholarships, but if you apply for the small one and you're one of maybe, 5 people who applied for it versus a larger one and you're one of 1,000 people, your chances are so much better for the lower one. And you're gonna hear me say this all the time, every little thing adds up. So there were some $250 scholarships that I got. I think there might have even been a $100 one once. Like, they were very small, but everything adds up. So take your time, I know it's time and effort, but apply for all of the scholarships. You also want to apply, even if you're not quite sure, if you think, oh, my chances aren't very high of getting this, you never know. When I actually was finishing my bachelor's degree, I had applied to a advanced standing master's program, which is like a 1-year intensive master's program. And they only took 40 students a year, and I hadn't even finished my bachelor's yet. So I know my chances of getting in weren't very good. But I applied, and I applied for a grant as well. And you know what? I got the grant. They actually gave me the grant. And it was full tuition and partial living expenses. Like, amazing. Now, I didn't end up going to graduate school, and I got on the wait list, by the way. Yay. Which I'll explain more what happened there in a minute, or a little later on. But you just never know. So try and apply for everything that you possibly can. I was also going to talk a bit about honor societies. There's small things you can do to increase your chance of getting scholarships and bursaries, and joining honor societies is one of them. Sometimes that means just you take honors type classes at post-secondary. Other times it's just a little extra work, or sometimes it's just paperwork and that's all you do. But anytime you can kind of buff up that scholarship resume and make it look better, it's a great chance to do it. So that's something else. Now, the one that's often forgotten about, I kind of think of it as like the distant cousin, is stipends. Stipends is basically where money is given to you, like taken right off of your tuition and whatnot. So the money doesn't even come to you, it just reduces your tuition. And this is a great way to lower your tuition. Now, I know like some universities offer it for like RAs, like people who are in charge of dorms and stuff, student government, that kind of thing. I actually found a really neat thing at my university that was the Student Advisory Council. And what it was a group of students who were basically like mediators between the students and the faculty. And this was totally fit with what I love to do. I love to problem solve and find solutions and work on projects. And so we met, I want to say twice a month, and then we would each have like an assignment to work on during the time. But while I was doing something that I loved and building my resume, I was getting a stipend every semester. I think it was maybe $300. It wasn't huge. But again, every little bit adds up. And so I was able to reduce my tuition that I even had to come up with to begin with, just by doing something that I actually really enjoyed, which was fantastic. So make sure that you're looking for stipends as well. Contact your university, find out what they give and what interests you and what might work for you. So employment is another one. If you work during university or post-secondary or not, you know, that's a really personal choice. I did work. I worked in the international admissions office at my school. And because I was on a student visa in the US, I was allowed to work 19 hours a week. In the summer, it was a rotation of 40 hours for 3 weeks and 19, and then it would rotate. I had to work in order to pay for my education. I found a job that I liked, that kind of fit in with what I was learning about and doing, that fit my personality, that fit my schedule. That's really important. And it worked for me. Again, it's really personal if you choose to work during that time or not. One thing to consider though is when you start attending post-secondary. Pretty much everyone kind of thinks, oh, fall, you know, you finish in, or at least in North America, you finish school in like June and you start school in the fall. But your chances of getting in are higher, first of all, if you apply in a different semester. But if you want to get a really good job on campus, near campus, start in the spring or summer. Because a lot of students go home at that time and those jobs become available. So you get a head start or a head jump on finding a job, then you can keep it all the way through if you stay there. So that's a tip I would give as well. And that's what I did too. I started in the spring, summery semester, found a great job, stayed there my entire time I was at university. I did pick up extra hours one summer, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that's a good time to try and get in there and get a job and get that income coming in. All right, housing and food, because you gotta live somewhere and you gotta eat, right? Of course, if you're living at home or nearby, that might be a little different. As an international student, I had to live on campus in the dorms. It was not great. The dorms were great. I had some great roommates, but the cafeteria was horrible. And you know what? It was so expensive. They had one kind of, they call it hale. I went to school in Hawaii, a bit dorm that had cooking units, but there was a 2-year wait list to get in there. And so I was stuck with the cafeteria for a long time. I actually ended up having some heart problems, and when I came back to see a doctor here in Canada, he wrote me a note to excuse me from the meal plan. And that saves so much money because often you get so many meals, but you're not using them all because it's too much. So that was one way that I saved a lot of money. I got a little mini fridge. I just bought groceries as I needed them because there's always free food around. And that's something I always tell people. Whether you have any kind of like events, right? Like maybe there's someone's birthday or weddings were a big one where I was, events on campus. Yeah, there's always free food and events going on or cheap food. So where I went to school, I went to BYU Hawaii, and right next to it is the Polynesian Cultural Center. And if you've ever been to Hawaii or if you've never been, make sure you go to the Polynesian Cultural Center. It is an absolutely amazing place. They have an agreement with BYU Hawaii so that students can work on campus there. And they actually bring students from around the Pacific Islands, and they're able to get an education there, and they work at the Polynesian Cultural Center and share their culture in exchange for their tuition, their housing, their food, with just a little bit they have to pay. It's an amazing program. My husband actually came from Fiji to Hawaii, got his bachelor's degree through this scholarship. It's a fantastic scholarship. I can't say enough good things about Polynesian Cultural Center, so if you're ever there, make sure you go. You are supporting amazing students. But they used to also, at the end, after they have the luau's, they always had this food left over. And so certain days, they would actually sell the food by the pound at the back of the PCC. So as a student, I was able to go to take like those clamshell container thingies, fill it with the food, like amazing food, and it would get weighed, and then I would pay it for it. And that was one way that I got cheap food. So there's always ways to get food. When I got married and we moved into married housing, there was actually a farm in behind, and it was a rotation. We had to take turns with our ward congregation, taking turns taking care of it, and then we were able to take the produce home. And there was always extra produce there. You could show up on a Saturday morning, and if there was extra produce, you could just take it. And there was breadfruit around campus. It was kind of, maybe I shouldn't tell the story, but it was really funny because everyone would kind of watch the breadfruit around campus, and then as soon as it was ripe, you had to be quick because it would be gone fast. And there were passion fruit. There was a lot of food you could just kind of get from around. And I know if you don't go to school in a tropical climate, I know. But there's always programs, different things. Even where I live now in Alberta, we have things like in the fall, you can sign up to pick fruit. There's people who aren't able to pick their fruit trees or they don't want to. And so they sign up with this organization. People come and pick the fruit, and then they divide it. They give some to the homeowner, some to the food bank, and then the people who picked it get to take some home. So there's always options and things like that, or the good food box. There's always things to help keep the cost of food down. Another one is to cook with friends. Sometimes it's when you're, a single person or even just a married couple, it can be expensive to buy ingredients. But if you cook together, you can always save money that way. Remember I said about that cooking dorm? Well, my then future sister-in-law actually lived there. And so we would often bring some food, and she would make dinner or we'd make dinner together. And it was a great way to keep the costs down. And then in terms of housing, you just have to go as cheaply as you can. What's your budget? You just have to do what you have to do, right? So the next one, Textbooks. Oh, textbooks were such a high unexpected cost for me. I did not realize how much they were going to cost. But there are some ways to save. Of course, secondhand, usually people post them for sale. There's sites online you can order from. There's some websites, I'm trying to remember what it's called. I think it was half.com, where I could actually send my old textbook in and they would give me a credit, and then I could use that credit to buy other textbooks that I needed. Often the university would have once or twice a year kind of their tables. You could bring your stuff, sell it, get the next one that you needed. Our library at the university, I found, also had some of the textbooks. So I could go in and use the textbooks, or I could check them out for like a couple weeks at a time and make it work that way. Another option is to share or to borrow textbooks. You'd have to be really good friends with someone, or in my case, my husband, after we got started dating, he actually changed his major to mine. So there you go. We were able to share our textbooks just like that. All right, medical. So in Canada, we have free basic medical or very low cost basic medical, depending where you live, and premiums. Attending university in the US, I had medical insurance through the university, and I'm gonna share more about this in a separate video, talking about how to share or how to save the costs in both the Canadian and the American system and my experience with it. But I just wanna say it's so important to fill out the proper paperwork that you need to do. If you're like me and you're gonna be heading outside of the country for university, fill out those provincial papers. When I landed in the hospital for 10 days, Ontario, which is where I was living before attending university, paid for part of my hospital stay because I had filled out the proper paperwork and they were able to pay part of my huge bill. So fill out the paperwork and then check out my other video I'm gonna do about saving on medical costs. Okay, so the next thing is just a general source out everything you possibly can to try and save you money. Because I attended a university in the US, they have a motto, enter to learn, go forth to serve. So as an international student, I had to agree that once my education was done, I would leave the country. I would leave the US, I would return back to Canada, and I would live here and serve here. And because my degree, I did all my coursework, I had a 4-month, 1 semester, full-time practicum to do in order to get my degree, and so did my husband. We decided to come back to Canada and to do it in Canada. Now I can't remember what the office was called, entrepreneurship, job center type place. They actually paid the airfare for my husband and I to come back to Canada, one-way ticket, because we were done our education, we were heading back, we were gonna finish our degrees, we were gonna be a connection for the office for future students when we were done. So I mean, source everything. I mean, they paid our airfare. Like, it was fantastic. So source absolutely everything you can possibly think of and ask questions about everything. So then, student loans. Student loans vary so much depending on the province, the state, the country. You really have to do your homework and figure out what's gonna work for you if you need them. I did have to take student loans. So the way it worked for my student loan was, because I was outside the country, they gave me the money personally once a year. And because I was living very frugally, because I was working, because I had scholarships, I actually put the money in a Canadian high interest bank account. And I only took the money when I absolutely needed it. And because of this, I was actually earning interest, and quite a nice interest every month on the student loan, while the money was interest free to me. And that helped a lot. So highly recommend just being a little strategic about your student loan and kind of finding out what's the best way it's gonna work for you, but also to maximize every single cent that they give you. Be smart about it. So yeah, I borrowed the money. I actually came out of university thinking, you know what, I've done pretty good. I ended up only using about $5,000 out of the $24,000 I had taken. And I knew I had until 6 months after I graduated in order to pay the money back, and we were ready to pay most of it back. We thought, okay, we're good, here we go. Our plan was to come back to Canada to do our practicums, get our degrees, to start the immigration process for my husband, for me to go to graduate school, which I had that amazing scholarship, and to get on with our lives and pay our student loans back. And you know what? Surprise, that didn't happen. What ended up happening was about a month, 6 weeks before we came back, we learned that we were expecting our first child. And so I knew that going to graduate school wasn't going to work because it was such an intensive program, and I was going to be giving birth just a few months in. So we came back to do our practicums, and another student from our university was coming to Canada. He was from New Zealand, a day or two after us, and he arrived and he ended up getting held by customs and then actually being deported, saying that he did not have the proper paperwork. And so this affected my husband, and my husband had to postpone doing his practicum. And then I started my practicum, and only like a week and a half, 2 weeks in, I was just so sick with my pregnancy, I landed in the hospital. And I ended up having to drop out of my practicum. So here we were. We had both of us a semester away from finishing university. My husband was on a tourist visa. He had no ability to work legally. He had no medical insurance. You can hear my 2-year-old right here. He had no medical insurance. He couldn't work. I was super ill. We were expecting our first child. We had a lease on an apartment, very, very basic, cheap, sub-underground apartment. But we had a year lease we had to pay for. And now that we weren't in school, the money we had gotten, those scholarships for those semesters, had to be paid back. And my student loan was about to come due because now I was in the school. I had 6 months. So, and I didn't have medical. That's the other thing, because I had moved provinces, I didn't have full medical yet. So we found ourselves in a really difficult situation and basically had no income. So I'm gonna stop the video here, but I'm gonna share another video next time about what we did when we had very little to no income for almost a whole year, and kind of what ended up happening. So I hope this kind of gives you some tips though on how to save for post-secondary education. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I hope this finds that you are having a great day. Take care.